On this note, I would like to go ahead and introduce our final panel of Nakamoto's Den, but it could be potentially one of the most interesting one. As we've heard that in the last 2 days, there's been some talk of STOs and security tokens. And the next panel, which I'd like to introduce you all to, the title of the panel is, What Does the Future Behold? Can this year be the one of STOs? And in order to give an introduction to the panelists, I'll first of all introduce our panel moderator, Mr. Nirmal L, all the way from India. If we can get him a round of applause. Nirmal's the CEO of Inwara, which I'm sure you will learn more about. Welcome, Nirmal. Then we have the next panelist on, which is Dr. Mariella Baldacchino from Malta, one of the partners at Yiannis law firm. Welcome. Then the next fellow we have is Yiannis Menelaou, a good friend of ours and the CEO of Cyprus Blockchain Associations. Can we have a round of applause for Yiannis? And finally, but not least, can we have a round of applause for Christiana Aristidou? Welcome. And I'll let clicker, yes. And it's all yours, Nirmal.
Good afternoon. I'm hoping you aren't already asleep after the fantastic meal that we had. I'll very quickly set context. What we're talking about is what does the future hold? Can this be one of STOs? But definitely the motive of the panel is not to say, you know what, the next thing that is STOs. We're giving you 100%. We've all looked into our crystal balls, and we're sure this is what's going to happen. What we're going to give you is a flavor of what we think that's happening, what we've seen, our experiences, and potentially then leave you with anecdotal evidence to make your own conclusions. So at the outset, I'm saying do your own research. This is what we've seen in ICOs over quarter. We've seen very clearly what everybody's been saying. Everybody's saying ICOs are dead, ICOs are gone, they're a thing of the past. What I'm asking and what I'm trying to get some information about is what have been your experiences as far as ICOs are concerned? And why do you think some of the things that we've seen with ICOs are happening?
Yes. Like the graph is showing, essentially we've seen quarter one, quarter two of 2018 was a very big hype about ICOs. After that, we start seeing a slight slowdown. Predominantly, I think the issues with ICOs were the misleading information, the projects, the capability of realizing the project's values, which were forecasted by issuers, lack of trust eventually, and a number of other issues that we've seen in the ICOs. I don't know if from your end, like we've been coming from a jurisdiction like Malta, where we've had some experience and have issued regulations to ICOs specifically. This is very much was felt even if in our day-to-day work and advice to clients. I don't know from your end.
Yes,
and
yes, I believe that the year 2019 will be the year of the STOs. Already we have seen an STO running demand from clients, and we see around a lot of STOs initiatives beginning already, and soon other they tend to start an STO. Yes, it is about offering a security token to the crowd. This security token is built on blockchain mainly, so it is a tokenized security. From my point of view, and I have gone through several articles of academics commenting on ICOs and STOs. An STO is a subcategory of an ICO, although it is not presented as such in the media, and the journalists actually separate between the two. it is an offer to the crowd, and that is true for ICOs and STOs. The separation should be better placed as follows. Initial non-security token offering and initial security token offering, instead of talking about ICOs and STOs.
New nomenclature, you learned it first here?
Excuse me?
No, I said it's a new nomenclature. You learned it first at Nakamoto's den. Yeah, so what Christiana said is something that, again, you see in numbers. You see STOs moving forward. You see them gaining traction. Curiously enough, how does one go about structuring something like this? How is it really different from an ICO?
From a legal point of view, of course, the first, when the terms like Christina mentioned, ICOs and STOs sometimes are very generic. In the sense, you need to identify the digital asset, the token that you're offering, and I break it down to identify what rights, what utility it has, whether it has any similarities to financial instruments under the current existing MiFID and regulations which are already in place at EU level. And based on that, then you'll identify the structure. I come from a jurisdiction, which is Malta, which has legitimized and regulated a utility token which has a speculative element. So when we're looking at tokens which are used as a payment means, as a voucher for a service, and it is speculatively listed on exchange and traded, we've created another nomenclature which is called virtual financial assets, and it is regulated by way of registering your white paper and carrying out the necessary safeguards from an investor protection point of view. Dual management, MLROs in place, and even analysis of your IT system. That's a type. If you are then your token falls in dividends rights and profit sharing linked to an asset, then you're going to a traditional financial instrument. Traditional financial instruments, you need to refer to the prospectus directive, the MiFID, and go down that route.
Yeah, actually, you're very right. And if I may add on this one, if someone is willing to go and have an ICO or any other crowdfunding process, they should go through a lawyer, through an advisor, to run all the necessary checks and say if there is any possibility of classifying that assets under any of the existing securities laws, because in many cases that's actually the fact. And if that's the fact indeed, then that's a really costly process, and perhaps you should structure the project slightly on a different way, or the advisor will guide you and help you possibly move to a jurisdiction where it offers that flexibility, that regulatory framework, and it's always for the investor protection and the benefits of the clients.
And how are they really different as far as different jurisdictions are concerned? Is from a legal standpoint, what are the different distinctions that you see across geographies? Is a particular place or a particular country more, say, conducive to a security token offering?
First of all, we must share with the people here that although we see a lot of articles in the media saying that the STO market is regulated, it is unregulated to the largest extent. So as the law stands now, if anyone, any company wishes to run an STO, which, as we said, it is a security token offering, first of all, they need to focus on the nature of the product, of the nature of the tokenized product. And the issue here is whether it falls indeed within the securities laws or not, whether it falls indeed within MAR which is the market abuse regulation or not, whether in fact you have to draft a prospectus as the law stands now or not. So we should focus on the transferability of the token. And in order to define whether a token, a security token, is indeed transferable, we need to check on its real or on its nature, what it is exactly, because there is a huge variety of assets that can be tokenized. So when MiFID was written, the legislators had in mind the traditional securities. They had in mind the human language. They didn't have in mind coding or tokenization or tokens. So to its largest extent, MiFID deals with traditional securities. So we need to focus on the detail here in order to come up with laws that indeed can fit in the tokenized, the tokenized products. At this point, excuse me, I would like to share with the people here that as a national delegate of Cyprus to the ISO, I view the whole thing of STOs from both the eye of the standards and the eye of the law, of a lawyer. I am a lawyer. But since I had the chance to see the things from the eyes of the standards, when I go to the meetings of the ISO, which is the International Standardization Organization, we discuss there all these issues that arise around STOs, and I want to share with you here a detail. An STO, any token, but an STO in particular, is a smart contract that we run on a blockchain protocol. So what we have to be very careful about is how we structure that smart contract on the blockchain protocol. And standards will play a very crucial role in this context, because we really need the standards. We need to standardize how we write the agreement, the smart contract, into lines of code.
And what was your experience in Malta?
In Malta, we've identified these with having been a bit in the forefront of the regulations in Europe, and we've been exposed to a lot of hands-on experience in ICOs, we've identified these problems. Similar to what my colleague Christina was saying, is there's no yet concept of tokenizing of a normal equity or of a normal share in most legal frameworks that we have in place. MiFID was drafted contemplating traditional securities. So this is a problem that we've identified. What Malta has done, Malta has created a framework where you can recognize and register your IT infrastructure. It's still, the law has been passed and it's implementing through the building up of the authority. I believe my colleague Steve Tendon has explained briefly. But that would allow a recognition of your token standard, of your technical standards of your smart contract, and being recognized and registered. This is only a step one towards arriving at a proper standard for STOs or exchanges that will list STOs. But there is the energy to try to identify these solutions. In essence, that's what we've seen from a technical side.
If I may add a couple of comments and a couple of points. Actually, the definition of security token is well spot on. the regulators have to understand the tokenization part, and the crypto guys or anybody who is willing to come and have an active role into this space, they have also to understand the securitization part. And the regulation is there, and we can structure a tokenized product under the existing regulations. The big problem, and what we are all here today trying to discuss and find a proper solution, is that what blockchain does. A blockchain is a decentralized system. It gives the flexibility to a home user, either the user is in India or in Cyprus, to have access to different venues, different ways of financing and things like that. So that element, which is a multidimensional layer of procedures, that is what we are trying to create it under the securitization process. And as Christiana will explain, this process is very complex. It's a multi-layer, multi-dimensional problem, and possibly through standards and through the smart contracts, exactly because we're referring to multi-dimensional products. That's what makes the regulators kind of confused, and especially in Europe. But I think there is, on a positive tone, I think there is, we're on a way, and I think we can provide solutions.
Yes, because it is a different thing referring to which blockchain protocol will be used, and it is a different thing to set the standards on how these smart contracts, these self-executed agreements that the tokens represent will run on that blockchain protocol. So it is indeed important that the companies be aware of the standards. The standards haven't been issued yet. We are currently drafting them. But they will be issued by the starting of the 2021 year. I think is the latest date for the issuing of the standards is the starting of that year. So we look forward to the standards because the authorities will have to be aware and have in mind the standards in order to legislate. Of course, the standards are not law, but I've heard the guy yesterday, James, I think, talking about regulating the code, and that in Malta, I think you have regulated the code.
We have created a system where you can recognize your code, your IT infrastructure, for sake of being certified and eventually approved by the authority. So you can issue tokens, or even if you depending your product, if it's just an issuer or a pure platform.
So you defined which blockchain protocol, for example, is to be used?
Yes, you certify it, and that certification would confirm that you're in accordance with the best practices or standards that you can have of an IT infrastructure.
As per the standards, the international standards, regulating the code is a different thing from setting standards, setting and maintaining standards for running the smart contract into the lines of the code. I would be very happy to see Cyprus coming up with a law regulating what exactly? Recognizing the smart contracts, recognizing that this may form a contract by law if it has this and this and these characteristics. We need to define this. I think there have been good initiatives towards this direction lately. We had a roundtable recently with the government on these issues, the legal issues, and I believe that at least not soon, but within a reasonable time from now, we will see some good laws coming up in Cyprus as well. At least we hope.
I will add something on this, and it's specifically on the ICOs and STOs. It's the element of doing transactions. So it doesn't matter, although yes, we have passed the legal classification of the token, and it may not be classified as a security. So if we take that scenario where we have a coin or a token which is not a security, but then we pass to the next stage where that is listed on an exchange, and then we may also need to have regulations on that one, and that's also the part of the regulations which are also coming out quite soon. For example, in the States, if you decide to go public on a trading platform, and if you're a security token, you have to go through a regulated venue, which is called swap execution facility, and all the market making of the tokenization actually has to come through the traditional regulated brokerages. It's something which is not clarified yet in Europe, but as you well said, it's a part of the regulations which is coming out, and we will be very glad to see it actually
We
happening.
believe that a regulation will come up soon in Cyprus regarding security token offerings. We don't know exactly when, but we hope that it will allow for private companies to run an STO, because as the law stands now, you have to be a public company and you have to issue a prospectus in order to run an STO. So it's not good for Cyprus, because in this way we won't attract any STOs. And I hope, I wish we had some people from the government here to hear this, but we need to be at the forefront, and we need to arrange this, we need to look into this as soon as possible and come up with the law, like, for example, allowing the private companies to run an STO, and at the same time protect the investors by, let's say providing that these securities will be offered to this category of investors. If SISEC needs to control this, then they can ask for the offer to be made to the public, yes, to the crowd, but the investors who will approach the company to invest, the SISEC may ask for them to have specific characteristics that they will prescribe for them. And then another thing is that they should allow the companies to either run an STO without the need to draft a prospectus, or at least set a threshold, like this amount, up to this amount, you can run an STO without the need to be a public company, without the need to draft a prospectus.
I think that sounds fair, and that sounds very interesting.
I think if I maybe can rip up a bit, what we're all agreeing over here is that from a regulation and point of view, there's still work to be done if we're looking at STOs. It needs to be whatever new laws or recommendations that we can submit to each respective government and European. We'll be looking at something which is ensure investors' protection, whilst allow for the innovation each time of these new means of raising funds. That's how all the concept of the ICO came into place. It was an easy way of raising funds for startups with projects. It was appealing, it was cool, sexy, and all those hype terms that was in the ICO. But you weren't giving away part of your equity. You weren't giving away rights or governance in your company, which is, when you're looking at an STO, you're actually giving parts of your profit and dividends. So the issuer is also is wearing a different hat when you're offering an STO. You're offering more than just your demand and supply on your platform. You're offering part of your business in most of the time. So there's even an exercise by the company trying to raise funds to identify whether the STOs at the moment more appealing to private equities, hedge funds, possibly, and because the private investor has a bit been bitten by the experiences. But is that what you really need, or you still look at the possibility of issuing a utility token and maybe legitimize it through a jurisdiction like Malta that will allow you to still be approved?
Approved. Yeah. Yeah.
Europe is currently working to define when the security tokens will be considered as transferable securities, because only if they are considered as transferable securities will be covered under the MiFID directive. So comparing with the US, in the US they have another requirement. They want to see that it is an investment contract. So this was discussed in Europe as well, because we would like to see a harmonized approach globally in most of the jurisdictions. So it was discussed, the ICOs, STOs, and in US and Europe were compared. They compared them. And in Europe they said, yes, we need to look at the component of the investment contract. Also in Europe, US is not wrong to look at this component, to look at this characteristic. So there are some very good academics, and I was going through an article a couple of days ago of a university in Germany, of a very famous professor, and I have it with me there if you want to ask me, but I don't remember the name now, but I have it there with me. He said that in Europe, probably will also be accepted that if the token possess the characteristic, the component of investment contract, it will be considered as transferable. So it will be as a transferable security, and thus will be covered by MiFID.
There is also another one definition from the States, very similar to this one, which says if there is the chance, the possibility of making profits in a short period of time, then that is considered as an investment. And again, you fall under the same restrictions.
Very cool. And finally, one of the things that's burning everybody, how do you list an ICO and how do you list an STO, and how is it going to be different?
Actually, because I have been working that process for the last 3 years, again, you have to start from the legal things. You have to comply with the anti-money laundering directives, which is, by the way, something which is just announced by SISEC, at least locally in Cyprus, yesterday, but it's coming by 2020 in all European countries. The ML Directive 5, which is also covering crypto assets and crypto investments. So in any case, any operation we do in the crypto space, we have to have enhanced due diligence on the investors. That's one thing. And on the other thing, it's about the issuers, who are actually the owners of the project. They issue a token and then they get listed on an exchange. Now, the next big thing which is coming is that all of those execution venues, the market-making venues, if some of you can understand this definition better, is that they have to be regulated. In the States, they are already regulated. In Europe, possibly we will have some crypto exchanges licenses, or perhaps that's one of the functions of the existing market makers, which are regulated investment companies, to have. Whatever happens though, either the issuer or the investor, you have to comply with the KYC and money laundering directives. You have to provide source of wealth. And depending on your country of residency, as an investor, on top of everything, you also have to run a check with your accountant, because in some jurisdictions you are obliged to report your tax. When you report to the tax authorities, you may also need to report any income you generated or any profit you generated from any crypto activity. So that's something new which is coming out. So the regulation in the crypto space and also the AML and KYC directives for the better investor protection.
The authorities focus a lot on the investors' protection, and it is a requirement. They must be protected. What is going to make or break the STO market is exactly this. If the authorities have control on the protection of the investors, then we will see the STO market bloom. Yes.
Fantastic. On that positive note, I think we'll wrap up. We'll wrap up. If we see concrete resolution, we say that we're going to see the STO market bloom. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.